interview on The Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Today we focus on questions that few people are likely to address, yet they are important and need to be honestly answered. What does it feel like to be a Muslim in Modi's India? How do Muslims feel when they are lynched in the name of cow protection, accused of love jihad, hear calls to boycott their businesses, pilloried in campaign speeches, and told to go to Pakistan? Does this suggest that Muslims are becoming second-class citizens in their own country? And as a result, has the fraternity that binds together India's communities been fractured or weakened? And finally, what is the Prime Minister's response to this? Those are the issues I shall discuss with the former Vice Chancellor of Jamia Milia Islamia and former Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, Najeeb Jung. Mr. Jung is also a former IAS officer and Oxford scholar. Najeeb Jung, let me start with a simple question. What does it feel like to be a Muslim in Modi's India? Do Muslims feel they belong, or do they feel they are looked upon with suspicion and even at times disliked?
To answer the first part of your question, the answer is an unequivocal yes. The Muslims do feel distressed, and they believe that large parts of India are not trusting of them, albeit there is a dislike for them. They are treated as, or they are considered fourth columnists. I didn't get the second part of your question.
The second part was simply this: are they looked upon with suspicion? Do they feel that they are disliked? And I think you answered that when you said large parts of India do not trust them.
Yes, I completely agree with that. Yes.
Let me ask you a question about yourself, Mr. Jung. How do you personally feel when Muslims are lynched in the name of cow protection, accused of love jihad, when they hear public calls to boycott their businesses, when they're pilloried in campaign speeches and told to go to Pakistan? What impact does that have on you?
I feel sad. I feel extremely distressed. I tend to feel that I tend to question whether this was the India that I was born in the 50s and 60s when I never felt this. But I'm more sorry for many of the people I meet who feel that they have their backs to the wall, that the alternatives in lives are getting more and more limited. I feel very sad when I see young boys and girls coming to me because of my background in Jamia, wanting to leave India and work in the Gulf and in Europe. I feel extremely sad when I see their parents encouraging them to leave India. So in a nutshell, the situation is that bulk of the Muslims feel that they have their backs to the wall, that they feel that they're being ill-treated, that they're not fairly treated, and they're looking for alternatives, perhaps not in India.
So despair has filled their hearts. They look upon this country as their own, and yet they're treated by their fellow countrymen as if they don't belong.
They absolutely believe that the country is their own. They were born here, their parents were born here, their grandparents are buried here. There is no doubt on that. So the despair is because of the way things are around them, and it leads to a sullenness, a sadness, a lack of confidence, which to me is extremely sad, because it was not so even 10, 15 years ago.
The truth, Mr. Jung, is that there has always been prejudice in India, but in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was a sense of fraternity that bound the country together. Has that fraternity been fractured or weakened? Has the social contract between India's minorities and the majority been damaged?
Look, on the question of prejudice, this is very, very interesting, because I just came across a study. The prejudice in India, the maximum prejudice, is against women. The second number comes Dalits, and then come the Muslims. So the prejudice is against the weaker sections in society that exists in this country. However, there is, on the question of fraternity again, when I see the fraternity in large parts of India exists because we live together. There are attempts to break that fraternity. There are attempts to damage that fraternity for political reasons. But the fraternity that had always existed in India for hundreds of years does exist, though it is struggling to survive.
Are there still close friendships between Muslims and Hindus in villages, in small towns? I'm not talking about large cities. Are there still long lasting fraternal bonds between them, or have those come under suspicion and doubt?
That is the big hope. If you go back to the Muzaffarnagar riots of 2013, which were very, very bad riots, or 2012, today the Jats and the Muslims stand together. The old friendships of families have come back. So despite great efforts of the political party in power to break those relationships exist today. They have been revived. Interestingly, when one minority is harassed or feels uncomfortable, then other minorities come out in sympathy. And so the old animosities between Sikhs and Muslims have been set aside. And the Muslims and Sikhs are coming together. So there are very interesting parts of this, of what is happening around us. But to come back to your question, yes, there are old friendships. There are old friendships in villages. People sit and eat together. But there are repeated attempts to break those friendships.
Who's making these attempts?
Oh, obviously, it is the politician, because you must understand that the party in power has realized or feels that there are 20% people who will not vote for us, but there are 80% others. And if you can get 50% of that 80%, that you come in power. So the more you harp on differences in the community, the more chances of your staying in power. And this is what the attempt has been consistently over the last 10, 12 years. Now, the question is, can this survive? Can this attempt go on? Because there is a limit, there is a point to which this will finish. The attraction to communalism, will it last forever? The sense of camaraderie among neighbors, can you destroy it forever? Today you have managed substantially. Your friends and my friends, your drawing room and my drawing room, people openly talk of dislike for Muslims, distrust for Muslims. This is a lot that has suddenly emerged in the last 10 years. Where it was hidden, I don't know. This is the same lot that will go back into their respective holes once this government is not in power. Now, that is the truth of it.
But at the moment, whilst this government is in power, it has now become acceptable. It has now become almost common to hear people in Delhi, Bombay drawing rooms talking about their dislike for Muslims.
Absolutely. That is what I was mentioning, that it is strange that it is in your drawing room and my drawing room and common drawing rooms of the upper middle class of lawyers and doctors who talk of dislike and distrust of Muslims and Christians, and of course, Sikhs. This is the tragedy of this country, that we are putting 20% of this country in the dock.
How do
It
you
is really,
assess
really very sad.
How do you assess the Prime Minister's response to all of this? He fought the last election accusing oppositions of wanting to give Hindu Mangal Sutras and cows to Muslims. He has ministers in the cabinet like Giriraj Singh who have told Muslims to go to Pakistan. He has chief ministers who talk of 80% versus 20%. You were citing that yourself a moment ago. The same chief ministers taunt Muslims as Abba Jan. Is the Prime Minister condoning? Worse still, is he encouraging this sort of speech?
Look, the less we speak of the likes of Giriraj Singh and others, the better. I mean, I don't think you should bring your program down to that level. The question is, should the Prime Minister not intervene and stop this? Now, I have said repeatedly on other channels also, the only person who can stop this is the Honorable Prime Minister. It's the calculation that he makes that whether this kind of talk helps him stay in power, whether it helps him politically. That is the big issue. And that, I don't know why a man of his stature who's in his third term would not put a stop to this. Obviously, he has to come out and tell these people that enough is enough.
But he's not doing that.
Yeah, he has not done so far.
He, far from not having done it, he has also himself indulged in it. He fought the last national election, accusing the opposition of wanting to give Hindu Mangal Sutras and cows to Muslims. Even if that allegation was completely unfounded, it was villainizing Muslims.
Yes, actually, I laugh at it because it is not becoming of a man of that stature. It should not have been done. He said much more, in fact, in some places. But the point is that he does so, he has the power to do so, and he has not retracted from those things. So it is sad.
How does a small, poor Muslim man or woman feel when they hear their own prime minister talk of their community in this way?
Two things. He gets very concerned. He also gets very disgusted.
And he must feel as if the system, the government is turning its back on him.
Well, that I said in the beginning itself, that the bulk of Muslims in this country feel that this government has turned its back on them.
Now, as you know, Mr. Jung, officially, India is a secular state where the government does not favor or give preference to any religion. And yet, the Prime Minister frequently visits Hindu religious ceremonies in his official capacity. Most recently, in connection with the temple in Ayodhya. How do you view that?
You know, this attending of religious functions has been done by others also. If we go back to Mrs. Gandhi, she also went to religious functions and so on. The difference here is that a Jawaharlal or a Mrs. Gandhi or someone else would attend would go to all religious functions. I mean, Jawaharlal would go to a dargah or Mrs. Gandhi would go to a dargah. Here, it is only one religious function that they would go to, currently. Now, that is the problem. That means that you are singling out the Muslim community in a way that you will not go to them. You will not wear a cap if offered to you, but you will certainly wear all kinds of things and accoutrements if you go to a Hindu function. That apparently is not correct. And I mean, it's very, very noticeable. So it hits you in the eye, you understand what's happening, and you don't like it.
Let's
And
talk a little.
of course, it is against the Constitution, I think.
It's completely against the Constitution, both letter and spirit.
Yes. Yes.
Let's talk a little about the government. For the first time in Indian history, the ruling party has no elected Muslim MPs in either House of Parliament. It doesn't have Muslim MLAs in UP and Bihar, which have sizable Muslim populations. And as a result, India's 200 million Muslims almost have no voice within the ruling establishment. What message does that send to them?
That is exactly what I mean. That this party feels that by keeping them out, you are sending out a message. Number one, that you guys have been put in your place. And the other message is to the larger community that we are with you, vote for us, we stand by you. That is it. And they have effectively proved that minus this 20%, they can rule. So they don't care what you think about it. The concept of affirmative action, the concept of having a feeling for the weaker sections doesn't exist. The idea is to gain power. Coming to power in India is a very expensive and a difficult exercise. These people have mastered it. Now, to stay in power, you do all this. And that is how it will continue till they stay in power. And of
Is
course, let us also not forget that even the so-called secular parties, and I'm not counting the communists in this, the so-called secular parties, play the same game of soft Hindutva. Nobody today, none of the parties can actually accept, with the sole exception, I think, of Mr. Rahul Gandhi, who comes out boldly, but with the sole exception of that gentleman, no one comes out cleanly, boldly against rank communalism in India.
Is that the impact of the Modi rhetoric on the politics of the country?
Yes, of course it is. It is people are afraid. Again, like I said, you want to get power again. You want to come back into power. And therefore, you have to play part of that game. If you're not a center forward, at least play a halfback.
Isn't there a third message behind this deliberate attempt to exclude Muslims from the ranks of the BJP in parliament, from the ranks of the BJP as elected MLAs in assemblies like UP and Bihar? And that third message is that political integration is not essential to the BJP's idea of governance. Previously, Indian governments were very concerned about integrating the country together. That's not a priority for this government, it seems.
Isn't that obvious? That's what I've been saying. That today, integration in the sense of the whole, the 100%, is not in their interest. Because to come to power, it is only that 80% that they look out to. And of the 80%, if they can get 50%, they are in power. That is the aim. So integration is far from the canvas at the moment.
Let's come against this background to two steps that this government has taken which have deeply perturbed India's Muslims. First, the Citizenship Amendment Act. In a piece that you've recently written for The Wire, you say, for many Muslims, its message was chilling, not only for what it said, but also for what it implied. What was that message?
Look, let me start with this. The Citizenship Amendment Act is against the Constitution of India. It singles out one particular community that you are not welcome, period. I mean, let us understand the chilling message that comes from the CAA. To give you an example, I mean, I of course agree that we are not part of the refugees conventions, but we have attended plenty of the refugees convention meetings, and we know what it means to be a refugee. So imagine for a moment a raft coming into the Bay of Bengal or the Arabian Sea, and it has two people. They are starving. They've come out through a storm. They come in a boat and they're about to land when the Coast Guard stops them. One's name is Ram, the other name is Rahim. Ram has said, please come in. Rahim is turned back into the ocean. Go back to the ocean. It may be thunderous. It may be raining. You may be starving. Is this what you want? That is the CAA. And that is the big concern with CAA. And of course, it doesn't end there because the CAA has to be read with the NRC. Because the natural corollary to the CAA is the NRC. And we have seen its effects in Assam already. So it terrorizes Muslims in many ways. How do you think in bitter winters of Delhi, those old 80-year-old ladies came out and sat in those bitter winter nights out in the streets of Shaheen Bagh to protest? And how did these women come out in Bombay and in Lucknow and in Guwahati? Why? Because of this extremely threatening and frightening message that the CAA gives. So The point that you were making and asking is that we consider, at least I consider, that the CAA, one, is unconstitutional, and two, it is inhuman. It is not, as per the aspersions of the India that we have lived in, it is not. I mean, we claim we are the land of the Buddha and Mahavir and Gandhi. That's not how India should behave.
So once again, when Muslims look at the Citizenship Amendment Act, they say this is a sign that the country is shutting its door on us. It's pushing us out. It's turning its back on us. It's a message that you are not welcome, you don't belong.
Yes, you see, sometime back, I remember the Honorable Home Minister had said that the Muslims have 24 countries and we have only one, or Hindus have only one. This is a kind of pan-Hindu and pan-Muslim concept that is long dead. There is no pan-Islam. I can't go and live freely in Saudi Arabia. This is not Israel. I'm not a Jew to go to Israel and be welcomed. So there is no pan-Islamic thing that there are 24 countries where Muslims can go. And this is not the only country. It's so difficult. These poor Hindus who have come to India from Pakistan, look at the way that they're being harassed by our administrations to get Indian citizenship. It's never easy to get a citizenship, but you can't bar a religion or a caste or a community from asking refugee status in your country. That is inhuman.
The second measure that's affected Muslims is the reading down of Article 370 and the downgrading of Jammu and Kashmir status to a union territory. In your Wire article, you say it made Muslims believe they were subjects of a centralizing state rather than participants in a shared federation. Can you explain this further?
Well, I was in Srinagar on the eve that 370 was taken away. The yatra was on. Hundreds, thousands of yatris were turned back. I mean, here were people who had come from Tamil Nadu and Madras and so on. And they were turned back and asked to go away. There was panic there. You want to do something. Why would you not take the people of the state in confidence? The state had Umar Abdullah, who's been a minister in the Vajpayee government. The state had Farooq Saab. Nobody can challenge his nationalism or patriotism. There is Mehbooba Mufti, who has been your partner in a government in J&K. Why can't you quietly take them into confidence and say that this is the need of the time, that this is the extent to which we are doing this, but it was a deliberate insult to put them in house arrest, to bring down the status of a full state into a union territory. What was the message you were giving? The message apparently to Muslims, although 370 was welcomed by bulk of the country, as I've said, but to Muslims it meant that this is a Muslim majority state. We will treat it in a different way. And that is how the state continues to treat Kashmiris in India. When this episode happened in the Red Fort 3-4 weeks ago, if you recall, the bomb blast, Kashmiri shawlwalas who walked the streets of Old Delhi disappeared. They disappeared in fear. They disappeared in terror that the police is going to haul us up. Parents were calling students from and recalling them from hostels. Now, these are boys who have come in hope to the country. They are studying in Bangalore, they are studying in Mumbai, they are in Lucknow. They are asked to rush back home because what would happen? They'll be beaten up. They can be beaten up by their colleague students, or they can be hauled up by the police on suspicion. It is not necessary to prove your guilt here. It is enough to indicate that you are a Kashmiri Muslim. Now, that is sad. And that is something we are concerned about Kashmir. But what are we doing to win the hearts of the Kashmiri?
In other words, Kashmiri Muslims are guilty. They have to prove they're innocent. It's not the other way around.
That is so for most Muslims. Much more, of course, for Kashmiris. Much more for Kashmiris, of course. We have broken their hearts. How do we ever get back Kashmir integrated fully into India, what steps can any government now take to bring them back into our fold? They're so deeply hurt. It's a very deep wound which we keep sort of deepening it by or incising it again and again and again.
In your Wire article, you write, minorities increasingly feel that they inhabit the republic on sufferance rather than partnership, that the gradual normalization of majoritarian sentiment will harden into the common sense of future generations. Once that happens, you say, the delicate equilibrium envisioned by the framers of the Constitution will die. Doesn't this mean India is steadily and increasingly becoming a Hindu country, not the secular country our founders wanted it to be, and that the fraternal vision of our constitution is being eroded?
There is an inexorable movement towards making India into a Hindu country, if it is not already. There is a difference between de facto and de jure. And so, de facto, there is a steady movement to make this into a Hindu country. What is barring is the constitution itself, that you can't make India into a Hindu country, although there are efforts all the time. I am told a private member's bill has been introduced in Parliament to remove the word secular from the constitution. Now, this gentleman doesn't know that the constitution still contains the word fraternity, which to me is more powerful than secular. But there is an attempt to remove that word secular from the constitution. Why? Don't we have many more things to do? All we do is talk about Vande Mataram. Don't we talk about what's happening around us? Why can't we deal with issues that are much more pregnant for everybody's life rather than take up issues which are non-issues and which should not waste time of people and Indians?
Perhaps this is why in your Wire article you say the emotional foundations of citizenship have shifted subtly yet profoundly. Do you fear that Muslims have become or are becoming second class citizens in their own country?
No, I don't think Muslims have become second-class citizens. That, if to use that word, you have to go back to Golwalkar's we and bunch of thoughts where he actually indicated that these chaps should be second-class citizens. But that is not so. It has never happened, and I don't think it is happening because Muslims themselves, despite what is happening, are regrouping. There is a development of strategy that they will educate themselves, they'll come out and compete. So there is a very strong movement to educate young Muslims among Muslim families. So if you have a carpenter, today, if you repair your house, your carpenter, your plumber, your electrician will be a Muslim. Now, these guys, their children are now studying engineering. Their children are now in good colleges. So they want to educate so they can be part of the mainstream. This is the struggle. This is the struggle that here they attempt to come back into the mainstream in whichever way possible, but you put roadblocks. So second-class citizens? No, I don't think so. And I don't think that they think that they're second-class citizens. Are there efforts to treat them differently? Yes, as I said. Are those efforts illegal and wrong and unconstitutional? Yes, I would say. Will those efforts succeed? I don't think so. Considering the plurality of this country, considering the numbers you are dealing with 200 million people. The entire population of the United States is 320 million. You are dealing with 200 million people in India. You can't push them away. So, and looking at the plurality, looking at the fraternity that I was talking to you about, that exists in villages, the bhaichara. This love jihad, etc. Do you think you can stop young boys and girls from marrying each other? Do you think the threat of love jihad and police coming to your house that your daughter has married my son will stop romance? Do you think that this movement every year against Valentine's Day, will it stop boys and girls from meeting each other in colleges and schools and parks? This is going to grow. So therefore, I think that whatever attempts and efforts are made to put them in the dock, they can't succeed. But the process is painful. It is painful for the Muslim community. And more than that, Karan, please understand, India remains secular. In 80% of India is Hindu. And India remains secular because bulk of them remain secular. That's very critical for us to understand. This party comes to power with some 30%, 35%. What happens to the remaining 70%? Remaining 70% of India do not support this pushing, this othering of the Muslims.
But the remaining 70% are silent whilst the othering happens.
Yes, that is very sad. That is very sad. But there are voices. There are voices that are coming out. There are voices like yours. There are voices on the YouTube channels. YouTube channels are watched by lakhs in a day. Those are very, very secular voices that are watched by lakhs and lakhs of people. They may not be able to speak, but they will one day.
I hear what you're saying, Mr. Jung. Let me put an alternate view to you, however. Whilst there are undoubtedly Muslim voices of anguish and protest, and Muslims who are determined to better themselves and improve their lot in life, but by and large, India's Muslims have accepted what's happening to them and kept quiet. Most of them don't have an opportunity to speak out. Most of them are scared that if they do, they could be made to pay for it. How long will that silence continue?
Yes, that is a very important point to think. Like I said, that they are sullen, they are watching. They are extremely uncomfortable with this situation. They are not scared, I think, but they are sullen. They feel diffident. They feel that they are being done in unfairly. And how long it will last, one cannot say. As Faiz Ahmad had said, that lambi hai gham ki sham, lekin sham hi to hai. So it is an evening which is long and dark, but will it last forever? Who knows? Governments change, people change, and systems change. The biggest
Can I
empires in the world.
put this to you? What if the government doesn't change? What if in 29 the government is re-elected? What
Yes.
then? Look down the road for me. If the present dispensation, and more importantly, if the present dispensation's attitude and treatment of minorities continues for another decade, what sort of future do you envisage for India?
Look, if this system continues, then there is a lot of pain ahead for us. I don't know in what form. I can't predict anything at all because there are obviously efforts, even from the RSS, to soften the government's attitude. The RSS chief has been meeting Muslims in large numbers, not only Muslim leaders, but in large numbers in smaller gatherings, 200, 300, 500 in various cities, and talking to them. And talking to them of bhaichara and commonality and common DNA and so on. So there is an awareness in the Hindu right that there is a limit to which you can push things. Like I said, that these guys feel that by carrying on this so-called, the word commonly used, polarization, it helps them politically. Will it continue to help them? And if it does, then where does the RSS stand with them? Will the RSS back this effort to divide people? Because the RSS, I think, foresees difficult times if you try to alienate 200 million.
If I understand you correctly, you're saying the RSS is concerned that if you continue to play with matches, you could start a fire. And they're concerned about that.
I think the RSS is undergoing a debate within them. There are voices which are hard and there are voices which are soft. So there is a debate which did not exist. There was some kind of a debate in the time of Mr. Devras, who wanted to bring Muslims into the fold, which didn't succeed. If you recall, during the emergency when the ON went in, then the Jamaat-e-Islami and the RSS became great friends in jail. And when Devras came out, he wanted to induct Muslims into the Sangh, but it did not succeed. Now I think there's an effort to revive that effort, and because I think Mr. Bhagwat understands that you can't, if India is to progress, if India is to make a mark on the international scene, then it cannot be so self-divided. So
I hope you're right, Mr. Jung. There will be many listening to you who will be skeptical, doubtful, and even unbelieving. But I hope for the sake of our country, you're right. Of course, you are suggesting that this is, in a sense, pitting the RSS and its thinking against the thinking of the government and the Prime Minister, perhaps himself. But let's hope you're right. I thank you for the time you've given me. I thank you for sharing your deepest concerns about the state of Muslims in India. Take care. Stay safe.
thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.